Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're going to dive into a really fascinating exploration of shifting cultural norms. We'll be unpacking a highly compelling piece of academic research that looks at the sexual behaviors, orientations, and attitudes among youth in Thailand. It's a brilliant study, honestly, because it perfectly captures a generation that's caught right in the middle of a massive cultural transition. So, I want you to start by asking yourself this exact question. How are traditional cultural values clashing with modern youth behavior? Because that right there is the central tension of this entire explainer. We're looking at a society historically rooted in very conservative Buddhist traditions, and it's suddenly colliding head-on with internet-era realities, smartphones, and this brand new sense of independence. Let's see what the data actually tells us about this intersection. Okay, let's dive into this. The number 486. That represents the really robust sample size for this study. These are all third-year undergraduate students specifically studying health sciences at a university in eastern Thailand. And they were chosen for a very specific reason. By their third year, they've had enough time living independently on or near campus. That gives us a really accurate, concentrated snapshot of their actual behaviors when they're away from home. Here is our quick roadmap for today. 1. Context and the study. 2. Shifting orientations and attitudes. 3. The gender behavior divide. 4. Contraception and health risks. And finally, 5. Future public health needs. All right, Section 1. Context and the study, a generation in transition. Demographically speaking, this group is incredibly uniform. Nearly 96% come from a Buddhist background. Now, what's absolutely crucial to note here is that almost half of them are living in dormitories entirely off campus, so they have a tremendous amount of personal freedom. Yet, despite all this modern independence, a massive 70% still hold a highly positive attitude toward virginity. They don't just view it as a biological state. Many explicitly define it as a dignity of life or a special gift for their spouse. So you have this really powerful traditional undercurrent thriving right alongside modern college life. Section 2. Shifting orientations and attitudes beyond the binary. Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown of sexual identities is the dynamic that emerges. While 80% identify as heterosexual, we're seeing 11.3% identifying as bisexual and 8.8% as homosexual. The researchers point out that this is a noticeably higher proportion of non-heterosexual orientations compared to past studies in the region. It really shows us that human sexual orientation is dynamic. In this environment of independence, there's a gradual, shifting expression of identity taking place. But here's a huge question. When they have questions about these identities or sexual issues, where are they turning? Well, they're definitely not going to their parents, and they aren't going to doctors either. Instead, they're consulting Dr. Google and their best friends. 68% leverage the cyber world through internet chats, and nearly 65% rely strictly on close peers for counseling. They are completely bypassing traditional authorities to navigate their sexuality, favoring the privacy of their peer groups and their screens. Section 3. The gender behavior divide. Distinct realities. And this brilliantly illustrates the distinct biological realities between the genders in this study. Just look at the nearly 5-year gap in the mean age of their first orgasm. It's roughly 13.5 for the male students and 18.5 for the female students. Beyond that, the way they channel their sexual desire is strikingly different. For the guys, the primary solitary outlets are physical masturbation and watching pornography. But for the female students, almost 60% of them reported that they actively tried to divert their sexual desire by engaging in physical exercise. But here is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. Despite those vastly different biological awakenings and private coping mechanisms we just talked about, when researchers looked at their recent social dating and physical engagements over the last 3 months, their behaviors were remarkably aligned. Once they actually enter the socio-sexual sphere, dating, petting, intimacy, those gender differences largely melt away, showing highly similar rates of engagement. Section 4. Contraception and health risks. The knowledge gap. When we map out contraceptive frequency based on the type of partner they're with, a pretty concerning reality pops up. 15% of students completely fail to use contraception with irregular partners, and 12% fail to use it with regular partners. The researchers suggest this might stem from a false sense of security, basically trusting their lover's health status without any verifiable proof. And from a public health perspective, that is a major blind spot. So the crucial point here is looking at the specific methods they utilize. Yes, male condoms make up the majority at 73%, but look at that 20% slice. A full fifth of them are relying solely on the highly ineffective withdrawal method, or coitus interruptus. It's a massive red flag, and honestly kind of ironic that despite literally sitting in health science classrooms for their degrees, a fifth of this active population fundamentally misunderstands practical contraceptive efficacy. Now, if things do go wrong and they contract a sexually transmitted disease, how do they manage it? The data shows they prioritize absolute privacy and trusted accessibility above all else. The top choice, at 36%, is government hospitals. Why? Because this specific university campus actually offers a 24-hour government healthcare service unit right there on the grounds. It features a teen-friendly health working group, so it's secure, confidential, and super accessible for them. The author of the study summarizes the gravity of the situation perfectly with this quote. Some students still lacked the practical knowledge of the efficacy of contraception. These target groups needed to learn more about life skills in sexuality. That really hits the nail on the head. It's not just about memorizing biological diagrams anymore. It's about practical, real-world application and decision-making. Which brings us to Section 5, Future Public Health Needs, Bridging the Gap. Let's move to and see how this builds into a concrete roadmap for public health professionals and educators moving forward. Step 1. We have to acknowledge that internet-era behavioral shifts have happened. Relying on abstinence-only or traditional authority structures just doesn't work when kids have smartphones in their pockets. Step 2. Educational systems must pivot from teaching basic anatomy to implementing practical life skills training, literally teaching them how to properly protect themselves. And Step 3. We have to expand secure, confidential health access, much like that successful 24-hour campus hospital we just looked at in the data. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As we look at this clash between deep-rooted traditions and undeniable modern realities, ask yourself, how must modern educational systems adapt to internet-era realities to actually protect our youth? Because the data clearly shows that just handing them a textbook isn't cutting it anymore. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structured look at the data has sparked your curiosity and given you a much deeper understanding of this vital topic. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.